Now, here's an example. Drought now grips more than half of the nation. That's a very, very frightening story. You remember the Dust Bowl stories from the 30s, the Grapes of Wrath, the Great Depression? Only in the 1930s and the 50s has a drought covered more land than right now. Saying, oh, there's a little risk of a Dust Bowl type catastrophe, say the government microcephalics. They don't know, though. But across America, topsoil has turned dry while crops are dying. Cattle are dying because they can't grow the corn necessary to feed the cattle. Pigs are dying because they don't have the money to buy bushels of replacement feed. And so food prices are going to go through the ceiling unless rains come. Let me ask you something. Where's the government on this? How's the government going to help the farmers whose corn and wheat crops are dying because of the drought? What's the agriculture department going to do for them? 80% of the agriculture department is given over to giving out food stamps right now, not to helping farmers. Everything's been stolen. Everything in the American government has been turned over to the welfare state. So we have a very serious drought, one of the worst in modern American history. And the fact of the matter is, it's similar to the droughts of the 1950s, not yet as intense as those of the 1930s. But no one knows how long this drought is going to last. Half of corn crop is going in Kansas. If there's no rain, it's going to die. Farmers are saying, I've never seen this type of weather before. I just think we're seeing history in the making. But what is the federal government going to do? Nothing. Tell me what the federal government is going to do. After all, the federal government is the man who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning to milk the cows, isn't it? It's some fat bureaucrat in the U.S. Department of Agriculture who flies to Malaysia on a junket to see prostitutes. That's the real hog farmer, isn't it? Some government bureaucrat who does nothing. Tell me what the government's going to do. Tell me what the government can do in a drought like this. Well, I'll tell you what they can do, but what they're not going to do. What the government can do is release some of the insane environmental restrictions that they've imposed and permit lake water and river water to be diverted for irrigating the crops. Do you actually think that any of the idiots who work for Obama are going to release waters from lakes and rivers to nourish the crops that are dying? You know that they'd rather see the crops die than the river dry up. You know that they have everything backwards. Here's a classic example of an idiot government that has no ability to help the American people. The wise thing would be to release waters from lakes and rivers right now before it gets worse. Because if they don't release lake and river water right now, grain prices are going to go through the roof. Higher food prices will result. And we're going to have higher prices in meat and poultry. But don't tell that to the government bureaucrats that Obama is so proud of. No, don't tell him that. He'll just tell you that the hardworking farmer didn't make it on his own. It was somebody else who built up that family farm. It was somebody else in the government who made that farm successful. Some fat bureaucrat sitting on a fat chair in Washington, D.C. That's the real hero of the American farm.